Hi everyone, Melissa here from Bee and Cozy Stitching, and today we're having an inspirational video. Now last week we did our background, if you will, and this week we're going to show you how to cut up our scrappy strips and create something new with them. But I thought we'd start with a little bit of inspiration and then we can move on to the how-tos to get this project done. So bear with me for just a minute. We'll take a quick walk outside and I will show you today's inspiration. To kick off our inspirational quilt video, we're going to show you the finished background quilt that we showed or viewed in the first video, and I will go ahead and link that down below so that you too know how to make the background for yourself. But we've used a beautiful blue strip set here, bordered in blues. For our first inspiration quilt, we've taken a red, white, and blue island strip set, or jelly roll, if you will, of 2.5-inch strips. We've cut them apart using our basic background method, and then what we've done is come in and cut down a strip, separating the two pieces, flipping them over so the colors land differently, and inserting this white batik fabric, if you will, and adding some applique stars and stripes. A perfect quilt for red, white, and blue. I'll come in a little closer so you can check out our stars. Now I will have some pre-cut stars available on our eBay site, and I will link that below. The flag I did get from Elementz, and I will put a link below for that as well in case you're interested in having some of your own. The Island Batik strip set, I am not sure if that's available anymore. I know you can get it on yardages, so you could go ahead just as easily, purchase some yardage, and make your own 2.5-inch strip sets. So that's it for our first inspirational quilt. Now, on to the next. Now, for our third example, for those of you that watched the previous video, this is our Purple Beast. Purple Beast was cut apart and leftover blocks were added down the side where we've cut it apart. This is a good example of where to use up leftover blocks or blocks you've tried making that you just don't like the technique and don't want to make any more of them. It's a perfect example of where and how to use up those leftovers and get them out of your scrap pile. Okay, so now that we're back in the workroom, we're going to go through step by step how we make our background fabric into something spectacular by adding that little channel of fabric down the side to create something that's special and personalized. We saw in the examples outside, the red, white, and blue one has a strip of stars. The Purple Beast has a strip of leftover blocks from a different project. The blue one we left intact so you could see the difference between the two. We also have the blue one with the stars in it. So you can see that the possibilities are endless on what to do. Now you just need to know how to do it. So the very first step is to go ahead and take your background and press it out really, really good because you want it to be good and solid. So I'm going to go ahead and tip you down here so you can see what we're doing. There we go. Good enough. Okay, so as you can see with my background, I want all of my seams to be pressed in the same direction. And I want them good and flat. I do use steam when I do mine. That's totally up to you. Whether you want to use best press, steam, no steam, completely and totally up to you. But what we want, and it's really important, we want to make sure that we get everything nice and flat, because we're going to come through here in just a minute and we're going to cut it down to the sizes that we want for the placement of what we want to insert into the quilt. Now remember, you don't just have to do this on the side. You can go ahead and do it across the top, insert a piece across the top. So if you had a couple small pieces of background that you wanted to put together, you could put them together by inserting something pretty in between. You can go in all fours. You can go at the bottom. You can go at the left, the right. That really is up to you and what you have in your head for a design or an idea, or what you have left over for blocks or a strip. Don't rule out using your panels. Panels are a wonderful place to put these. Now, you may have to build the fabric up to make sure that you get a row long enough that you can insert, but you can use all kinds of different fabrics to get that done. Okay, so once you have this done, then we'll move on to the next part. Okay, now that I have mine all ironed out, I thought it would be really neat for you to see what it looks like before we cut it apart. So I'm going to step back here. I'm not quite sure how much of this you're going to be able to see. But I think it turned out really pretty, and I'm excited. Now, what I have to put in between, I have these pineapple blocks. And the video for these pineapple blocks was a tutorial we did earlier, and I tell you where you can pick up your pattern and how to go ahead and make your own pineapple blocks. And I will go ahead and link that in case you want to make some pineapple blocks for yourself. But I will be inserting my pineapple blocks in my yellow quilt. So what I need to do next, I need to cut it apart so that I can add this piece. Okay, so what we want to do is make sure that we've got one end that's nice and straight, or as straight as we can get it. Remember, it's not going to be perfect. Don't worry about it. If you're off a little bit, not a big deal. So then the next thing we have to do is decide how far in do we want our strip to go. As a general rule, I like to stay between 12 and 15 inches. Any more than that, and I think the strip you're adding gets lost. And I think there's too much fabric on one side. I think that whatever is visually pleasing to you in the end will be perfect. But like I said, now here's 12 inches, and that looks pretty good. Here is 16 inches. Now we're getting a little big. If we come back to 14, that's kind of a middle of the road, but as you can see, we've got a lot of little pieces here, and we don't want to lose those. So because my center with the pineapples is a little bit larger, I've decided to stick with the 12 inches. So once I have 12 inches figured out, then what I will do, and I will use a big square to try and make it easier for you guys to see. Then what I will do is I will come in here off of the edge. I will cut my 12 inches. Oops. Yeah, you got to be careful of those seams so they don't move around on you. And we're just going to continue to cut up the 12 inches. Slide it down, because remember, we're keeping it straight on one side, so we know we've got a baseline of where we think this should be. And yeah, it's a big piece. You're going to have to maneuver it a little bit, but it's okay. You're up for the challenge. And remember, you can straighten it out once it's cut if you don't like it. If it needs to be straighter, go ahead and resize it. It's not a problem because it's your creation. It's however you want to put this together. You know, try and keep your baseline and your seam lines so that you've got a guide for keeping the bottom straight. And then you've got a guide for keeping the sides straight on your mat. It's heavy. It's going to pull. It's not a problem. We can go ahead and get that straightened out. And remember, again, we don't like it, we can square it up. Not a problem. Not a problem at all. All right. And there we go. What was once one nice long strippy background piece now becomes two. The next step, we'll go ahead and we'll leave this over to the side. Now remember, if it gets flipped when you put it back, not a problem. Doesn't matter. The strips can go back whichever way. They can go back and be attached whichever way you want them to be. If it's more visually interesting to flip it over because you get more colors and it looks different, go for it. But the next thing that you want to do is take your piece and you want to fold this in half because you need to have a registration mark somewhere. Because remember, it's biased, it's stretchy, it's going to stretch out on you. So now we have this little spot here, which is basically the center of our quilt. And once we have the center figured out, then we're going to go ahead, we're going to open it back up. Remember, this is my center line right here between these two pieces. Then we're going to take, because you've already pre-marked and pre-measured your center, the piece that you'll be inserting in. And what we want to do, and you can see I've put my registration mark for where the center of this piece is. So we're going to line up those center pieces, and then we're going to pin out. If you want to be doubly sure, you can go ahead and you can start stitching in the center and sew out one direction and come back and sew out the other direction. But basically what we're going to do, and I'm a pinner. I like to pin. I think it goes together better when I pin them together. So I like to pin the center and I like to pin each side, and then I adjust accordingly in between my two marks. I ease my fabric in so that I get a nice seam line out of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pin this, and then I'm going to stitch this, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a minute. Okay, so now we've got the two sides stitched together. I will have to go back in and give it a press, but I wanted to show you we now have our left side connected to our center or motif piece or the part that we're adding. And you can kind of get a feel for what this is going to look like as we're going along. See how the center just adds that little bit to it? Just kind of pops it up and makes it come alive. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take that other side piece that we cut. And again, we're going to find our center registration mark. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to line up those two center registration marks. And then we're going to sew the other side, pin that together, and then go ahead and sew that from top to bottom, and go ahead and attach now the right side to our center motif. So I'll go ahead and get that done, and then I'll bring you right back here so you can see what that looks like when it's finished. And then we'll take a walk back outside where you can see it all spread out so you can get a good look at the entire quilt that way. Okay, and for one last inspiring look before we wrap this up, we have the Blue Stars quilt made by Kathy, our crafty lady, and one last final view of our pineapple quilt all pieced and put together. I hope this video has inspired you to bust out some of your scraps or use up some jelly rolls. Don't forget to look through your works in progress. Find some of those blocks that maybe you just don't want to make any more, pop them in the quilts. Hopefully you've been inspired. You can see what you can do with some of these. I hope you had a great time today. Don't forget to hit the like button. I hope you'll subscribe to our channel and keep us going. Thanks again for joining us today. Can't wait to see you next week. Bye for now.